I'm sure they have them, statewide, but I know in southern Florida, which I know pretty well, you have a gun show in Fort Lauderdale or, Miami every other week.
That if the United States implemented better gun control, Haiti would have less guns?
No, they'd find a way, and they're never going to do that. They're never. That's about the only thing the U.S. produces anymore, or its guns, its weapons and its guns. I don't think you're going to be able to put a cap on it. People will find a way around it. If anybody's ever been to a gun store, you see everything is a wink and a nod. People are, is this good, Jimmy? Yeah, it's fine. Goes right out the door. So, no, I don't think even, they'll do a couple of show seizures on the Miami River every now and then, but, I don't think there's any real heart in it. They're not looking to stop the guns going down there.
All right, perfect. We're going to move on to Aristide a little bit because I know he's controversial. Do you think that the United States created a bigger problem in Aristide by removing him? Because initially, if you allow the people's choice to be the people's choice, and you allow that to take the natural course of its life, then we're able to see the democratic process and just see how the story would have been developed without the intervention. Do you feel like if the United States left this election alone, do you think Haiti would have been in a different position today?
Totally. Haiti, I was before you were born, Blandine, but 1991 in Haiti was a phenomenal time. After that February 7th speech that Aristide gave on the steps of the now gone palace, it was a renaissance in Haiti. There was a reverse migration. People were leaving the United States, selling what they had in the U.S., to go back to Haiti, to go live and build. And, it was a moment of great hope, of great optimism. And the U.S. came in and crushed that under its boot because they don't want that. They want cheap labor. They want slaves. They want a slave island. They want the people working for $5 a day. And Aristide was taking them in the other direction, in the direction of empowerment and having their own economy and growing their own food and not being dependent on U.S. rice or U.S. Products. So, yes, that was the beginning of this crushing, of the squeezing of Haitian self-determination, of Haitian sovereignty. And yeah, it was terrible. And this is the result now. But I often say this, Haitians have revolution in their DNA because every Haitian walks in glory for what their ancestors did. The first and last successful slave revolution, the first independent nation of Latin America. It was Haiti, which was the touchstone for the liberation of the continent. You see the Haitian flag in all the northern South American flags, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador. It's there, the red and the blue. The yellow is for the Latinos. So the point being that Haiti, this is part of the upbringing of any Haitian. He knows what his ancestors did. And I think it's the reason why they weren't able, that first coup, which was terrible, wasn't able to break the back of the movement. The second coup, which was even more terrible, wasn't able to break the back of the movement. And I don't think now the deployment of this gang suppression force, just like the multinational security support mission, I don't think they're going to be able to break the back of the movement. And all the... Movement? Say?
The Vive Ensemble movement?
Yeah.
Now, is the Vive Ensemble and the Lavalas movement the same? Have they merged, or is the Lavalas...
No, they're not the same. On the contrary, the Lavalas movement has been more or less co-opted. As you can see, by the presence of Leslie Voltaire, their representative on the CPT, on the Transitional Presidential Council. And and this often happens in history. What began as the leading force, dialectically, it becomes a regressive force. It moves from being lift to becoming drag, as we say in aviation. So it's a process which is the same, though. What Lavalas was is the same thing Vivant Somme is. It's a spontaneous generation of people. Lavalas didn't come out of a party either. It was almost a spontaneous uprising of the people saying, we don't want Marc Bazin, we want Aristide. And they got him. Now they
Who does Vivant Somme want?
Huh? Well, Vivant Somme, if we can, get it from the myriad statements that Sherisier has made over the year, and again, people can watch our film, Another Vision, where he articulates it very clearly. They want hospitals, schools, roads.
Not what they want. Who do they want? Who do they want?
They don't.
Party want Aristide. That's what they wanted.
No, Aristide embodied an ideal. Aristide was speaking. He was kind of safe because he was a priest originally, even though by the time he was elected, he'd been defrocked, rejected by the Catholic Church because the liberation theology that he proposed was not to their liking. But so he became a sort of a savior figure, right? He was going to be the guy who fixed everything, solved everything. And there was a kind of, I would say, an unhealthy idolatry of Aristide at the time. People, would, it was crazy. I mean, I remember when he came to New York City in 1992, he stopped by Haiti Progrès, but it was just delirium. People were beside themselves. It was like...
To me, I've watched a couple of documentaries, original OG documentaries on Aristide, and I'm looking at the crowd size, and it's comparable to Obama when he first ran. It was just, like you said, unhealthy delirium. Like people were just like tired of what the old regime was doing. And they're just it was a refreshing face.
It was very similar to Obama, very similar to people thinking, here's the guy who will change it. And of course, that's always, I would almost say foolish to think that one guy is going to be able to change everything. It can't and doesn't happen. They recuperated Obama, if he ever wasn't recuperated, almost from the get-go, before he was even out of the gate. The guy became, a guy who was bombing wedding parties and across the Mideast and drone program and surveillance and you name it. I mean, Obama was a disaster in terms of the people's interests. It's a little bit the same way Trump now. You see a lot of the working class saying, Trump is going to save us.
Do you think Trump is in the people's interest? Because
No, of course not. Of course he isn't. I'm just saying there are working class, poor, uneducated people who think that Trump is going to be, but the guy is just part of the same machinery, the same alternates that they do in politics here. We haven't had real candidates since maybe probably FDR, Frank Roosevelt back in the 40s. Ever since, basically every president has been almost a manufactured consent, as Noam Chomsky would say, that they create these figures. And even the whole Trump thing was, I think, largely fake. But people believed in him, or were believing in him. But now we see he's doing the same old thing as everyone. He's doing the exact same thing as Obama, who's his so-called nemesis. But not really. When you see them sitting together at somebody's funeral, they're hobnobbing and laughing and slapping each other's back. So yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So let's not be fooled. by
All right,
these.
I have one more question, and I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to open the floor. You brought up Ibrahim Traore,
What?
and
What?
Ibrahim Traore of
Oh
Burkina
yeah,
Faso.
yeah, sure, yeah.
So some people are trying to do a comparison of Ibrahim Traore and Jimmy Sherisier. Now, where do they fall short in that comparison? Because Ibrahim Traore presents himself in a different way. His media personality, his image is well controlled, and obviously he speaks with such authority and such I would say he has a really good oratory, right? And he's able to lead command and sit in rooms with world leaders, whereas Jimmy is unable to reach that height yet. Where is the gap? What's happening here?
Well, you have to think. He came out of the military. It was a military coup. Jimmy didn't have a military. He had his guys in Delma 6, and 4, and 2. And even though he was a cop and a very stellar cop, but that was his sole, I could say, army, which they couldn't do much with. He made an alliance with two other guys, Iskar in Cité Soleil and Chrysler in Carrefour. And they said, listen, let's, get ourselves together and let's not fight each other and let's turn the guns that we're given, that we have, and turn them against the bourgeoisie and change this thing so we get our roads, our schools, our hospitals, all these things. And remember, the Russian Revolution wasn't fought on the basis of Marxist-Leninist abstractions. It was for land, bread, and peace. Those were the three watchwords of the Russian Revolution. That's what allowed it to happen. So it's the same thing in Haiti. So basically, Sherisier is having to take a very chaotic and mixed bag. And again, I say this in now almost every interview. If you read about the Chinese Revolution, Mao Zedong was having to take a lot of groups, a lot of guys in who were bandits, who had been bandits on the road, not necessarily exactly the same as Haiti, but they had been people who had been involved in bad things, but they had knowledge of how to, run an organization and an army and do things with guns. So he had to take some of them succeeded, some of them did not. Some of them were rehabilitated and became disciplined soldiers and good, like Traore has. But Traore has that from the get-go. He comes out of an army unit, and so it's going to be a little more orderly. They're taking a power, but they're both going to be seen as a huge threat.
Okay, so my thing is the Haitian people have a problem with Jimmy because of the crimes that have been placed on him. And there are people talking about rehabilitation, the word that you just used here. And how do you rehab from these crimes that, Levantam and Jimmy has been accused of?
Yep.
He's been accused of.
You can't conflate the two, huh? That is,
Are they different?
of course. I was just explaining to you that what crimes is Jimmy accused of, according to you, that you're thinking of when you say that?
So when I speak to other people, they're telling me that he has been implicated or accused of the violation of the bodies of women and the unaliving. There's certain words you can't use here. I'm sorry. The unaliving of human beings and the mass unaliving of people.
No. Any revolutionary process, Mao Zedong said that, revolution is not a tea party. It is the act of violence of one class against another. One. So there's violence involved. The watchwords of the Haitian Revolution were coupe tête boule caille. You think that was just, people who were from the minuscule colonists' outposts? No, it was fighting between people. In the American Revolution, you had 5,000 black people fighting for the American Revolution, but 15,000 fighting for the British. So these were not bourgeois. These were people that were fighting and who were being sacrificed. Okay, so Jimmy has no crimes of any credibility placed against him. He's just had a U.S. funded, backed agency, this RNDDH, the Pierre Espérance so-called human rights group, which accused him of a massacre, which has been totally dismantled in our films. We dismantle it. It's complete bullshit. A massacre supposedly in Grand Ravine, which again he explains and is bullshit. So he was not committing crimes. He was trying to stomp out crime. He was like, the Samuel of Canapé Vert. Your mic is off now.
My mic?
Oh, I just saw you mouth go with no sound.
Oh, sorry. So you said Jimmy was trying to stomp out crime. That's
right, stomp out crime. That is his, if you look at his, and look in Another Vision, you'll see it, in his original coming out in May, I think it was, of 2020. He's in a powder blue suit. One of our editors called him a dandy of a bandy, which I thought was funny. But anyway, he's dressed, and he explained, we don't want to have any more crime in Delma, in Cité Soleil, in our neighborhoods. So you see this Samuel in Canapé Vert of late. So Jimmy was like Samuel, but for Lower Delma. And that was his whole idea in the G9, is we're going to stop all the violence in our communities, and we're going to build something that protects our communities and makes it like the old Haiti. And indeed, if you ever go to Lower Delma, Delma 6, 4, and 2, it's like the old Haiti. People are relaxed, they're on the street, they're playing dominoes, it's not a violent place. It's a very serene place. And that's true in Crisla.
4 and 2 are safe.
Yeah, and Crisla's neighborhoods are safe. And Canaan is safe. And so these are neighborhoods. So they put a lot of false accusations to begin with, one. But, when G9 was formed, the bourgeoisie, in particular Boulos, Regional Boulos, now sitting in a jail, helped to create the GPEP, which had Gabriel as its head, who has worked always closely with Boulos. And they had Izo, Tilapli, L'Amour Saint-Jou, a number of other groups were part of GPEP, and they were fighting with the G9. So in the beginning, it was a fight between the vigilante gangs of the G9 and the criminal gangs, I say criminal because they hadn't yet been rehabilitated, of the GPEP. And so Sherisier's move, which had a huge success in that it resulted in Ariel Henry's ouster, and everybody agreed he had to go, was to merge those two groups. And he says it in our film, again in Another Vision. He says, listen, my enemies are not those people I'm fighting now. He never sees the people as an enemy. He is, and I've talked to many people around him and about him, and he's always reluctant to make any punitive replies and attacks, even when he was fighting with Belair, Kempes-Sanon, who they're rehabilitating too, who was a big kidnapper. So the process
is this... is a rehabilitated kidnapper?
Kempes. Kempes-Sanon was in jail. He was broken out of jail, out of the Quadruple prison. He'd been sentenced to life for kidnapping. He was a big kidnapper, and that was one of the big fights between him and Jimmy. Now, at the time, the same people who are castigating Jimmy, were castigating for fighting Kempes. But now they fight, so the guy who was their victim before, Belair, Kempes, now is a monster. And, Kempes was a pretty badass guy. But they're rehabilitating. We had an article in Haiti Liberté in the Creole section just 2 weeks ago, I think, where, he was saying things, he sounded very good. It appears he's been rehabilitated. Now, Blandine, this is not something that is static. It's not like, you're not going to have more betrayals. There will definitely be a fight somewhere. Somebody's going to blow up at some point in Vivre Ensemble, and there's going to be a battle, etc. This is the nature, not just of Haiti, but of revolution. You have lots of betrayals and lots of back and forth. But the end result, the same way, again, our article, I sent it to you this week. I hope you saw it. But you had Alexandre Pétion and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who had been bitter enemies. They'd fought huge battles. Alexandre Pétion was the bombardier of Cretapiero. He was a guy who, so they'd been killing each other, but they got together to throw the French out. And that is what we hopefully are going to be able to see, where all Haitians can come together to throw out the imperialists who have had their boot on the neck of Haiti. Haiti was no paradise, Blandine, under Duvalier. People were starving. It was terrible. Look at, again, Bitter Cane. You'll see. It was a desperate situation. There were revolutionary organizations functioning everywhere. So this is just the process which has been ongoing for 50 years. So I think Kervin said it the other night. The Haitian Revolution didn't start now. It started quite a while ago.
Okay,
the current
open
one.
up the floor.
Yeah, open up the floor.
People can start asking you questions. Guys, let's go ahead and ask our questions in Creole, because we want to make sure that, because everyone here understands Creole, and we want to make sure that we're including our Haitian listeners who are fully Creole speaking.